Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where we just finished installing this module right here to our ISS, and we're now ready to go home. So to that end, we need to go this direction, away from the station, and get ourselves turned over into retrograde mode. So let's just get some distance from the station here. Now that we're moving away, we should be able to warp this without any problem. There we go. And now that we are relatively clear of the station, let's rotate over to retrograde. We can, of course, close our cargo bay doors. And let's head on home. Looks like retrograde is nice and away from the station, so that's phenomenal. Now, we do need to remember that next mission, we need to bring up a replacement large docking port that goes right here. So that's definitely going to need to be a thing. Luckily, we have a ladder right here that'll make that rather convenient. Now, I did say that we wanted to leave these here as backups. Okay, we're just going to go. We shouldn't need them. We shouldn't need them. So we're just going to go recover them. That'll be okay. Let's bring our periapsis height on down. And of course, the frame rate will get considerably better once we leave the space station behind. So that'll be absolutely great. Of course, that'll take a bit. Let's go ahead and physics warp here as we make our way out of here. Boy, that's shaking around a lot. Okay, it seems to be getting better. I don't like physics warping near the station, but we'll give it a go. Okay. Now, we are technically in atmosphere here, but I'm not too worried about that right now. I'm going to hop back to the station. So we're going to switch to the station, and I'm going to check to see if there was any damage from that physics warp. I don't like physics warping in vicinity of the station, but there shouldn't be any damage. It can't self-collide, right? So it should be completely fine. Now, this module I think is at a bit of a jaunty angle, but it's probably okay. It's definitely at, well, actually, yeah, it's at a bit of an angle. But there doesn't appear to be any damage here. So that is all good. Let's hop on back to the station plane. This is what it's called, although it's actually the Columbus module. We're going to switch back over here, and we are going to bring this on down. So at this point, basically all we need to do is circularize at this periapsis. We don't need to be worried about going into the atmosphere here. It's completely fine, in theory. So we're just going to bring this right on around, circularizing like so. There we go. We'll align to that node. And let's warp on around, falling on down to our periapsis here. And we're going to get this burn commencing a little before we enter the atmosphere, I think. But this is definitely going to be a re-entry burn here. No doubt about that. Now, remember, we did wiggle these around accidentally, so we might end up having some landing gear issues here. I think they're going to be relatively okay. I hope they are. But we'll see if we even have a landing. I'm not certain that we will. So it looks like we are in atmosphere here. We'll continue to physics warp forward a little bit. And we should be able to get this turned around, I think. We'll get this burn started now. Excellent. So this is going to be about a 34-second burn. We're still going to be quite high in the atmosphere here, and we can see our time to periapsis is in about 15 seconds. So we're going to hit the periapsis before we get this burn completed, I think. Although we are slowing down. So as we approach the periapsis, that time is changing. Looks like it's going to start going down here. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, so time to periapsis is now increasing. Looks good. Okay, we'll just park here for now. Let's go to horizontal velocity up. At this altitude, there's basically no atmosphere, so there's basically no aerodynamic forces holding us here. So we can now position about here, and we can warp on forward. What is this looking like for a landing? Actually, this is really close to the KSC. Fascinating. And this just circularized. To be honest, this is going to be a pretty lengthy landing. We probably should have brought it down a little further. In fact, I'm going to go to surface velocity minus here. And I'm going to bring this periapsis height down to about 10 kilometers. There we go. Now let's go to horizontal velocity up. That's going to be a much better landing. We need to drain out our remaining fuel because that will mess with our aerodynamics. There we go. And let's see how close to the KSC this ends up being. I don't think we're going to get to the KSC. I think this is going to be a water landing about here or so. But that's relatively close to the KSC, and that will make us some additional money. So that sounds absolutely great. And honestly, a water landing is perfect considering we have questionable landing gear right now. So I'm okay with that. No problem whatsoever. So let's just continue cruising on through here. Oh, we're only at 3x physics warp. Let's move that up to 4x physics warp. Not that I think that that's going to do all that much in terms of making this all that much faster. I mean, it'll make it like 25%, I guess like 33% faster, depending on how you calculate that. But it will make it a little faster. So that's absolutely fine. We just need to ditch a bunch of speed at this point. We're going way too fast to maneuver. So we just want to position here, and as the atmosphere gets thicker and thicker, it's going to get more and more interesting here. No doubt about it. Speaking of interesting, we're overshooting where I thought that we were going to end up landing. We're going to be a lot closer to the KSC than I thought. This is going to be a land landing. Okay, this could get absolutely spicy given what we know about these guys. I mean, maybe they do better than they did previously, but I'm not holding my breath on that one. We'll see how this goes. This is going to be very close to the KSC, actually. The KSC is like right up over here. I think it's maybe a little further. No, it's right here. This is the KSC. So we are slowing down here. We can attempt to rotate over and fly this way and try to land near the KSC. But we're overshooting it pretty heavily here. We're still pretty high up. So I don't think that that's even all that viable. Hang on. That was a physics warp issue there. That was our internal robotic arm going kind of haywire. So I'll just take us out of physics warp for the time being. That was absolutely a physics warp issue. So I don't think we're going to get to the KSC. We can try to turn around and head back that way, but we're still going pretty fast here. We absolutely cannot, at this moment, maneuver. If we try to maneuver, we might just tear our wings off, which would not be ideal. We definitely don't want that. So we're just continuing to get further away from the KSC for the moment. But we are slowing down quite a lot. We're down to about 1,100 meters per second. Now we're down to about 1 kilometer per second, and that is looking reasonably good. But yeah, we can turn around and try to head back this way. We're not making it back to the KSC. I can tell you that right now. We did overshoot it. I would like to not land in these mountains. Maybe we should just target a landing up over here, actually. That's probably a more viable place to land. I'm going to put us on kill rot for the time being. And we're going to just go to surface velocity up for the time being right now. Although, ooh, that was very sensitive. Are we still in physics warp? No, we're not. Okay, that was just very, very sensitive. So I'm just angling our wings to pull us up over this direction. I don't want to land in these mountains. Absolutely not. But we only have one attempt here, right? So we're just going to go to kill rot for right now. Angling our wings a little bit more here. And I'm going to pull us out of this dive about now. We're still quite high up here. Ooh, okay. That was a big nose up. I guess we're going this way now. Well, in that case, that lost us a lot of our airspeed there. Let's go to horizontal velocity up. We can get that back under control. So from here, I guess we're going to try to land in like this avenue. This is Highlands here. It's not too bad as far as the mountains go. That nose up maneuver is intense though. No doubt about that. So we're diving down at this moment, about as down as we can. And we're going to pull up and look to land somewhere around here. I'm going to extend our landing gear. And I'm pulling us up a bit here. Ooh, hang on. Okay, pulling us up a bit here. We still have a lot of speed at this moment. I'm going to get our chutes out. I don't necessarily love where we're landing here, but if we can get over this ridge, I think it might be quasi-okay, but we have too much height right now. We need to nose down a little bit and then bring this up. This is a spicy place to land, but honestly, the uphill landing might play into our favor a little bit here. So at this point, we're moving pretty slowly, nosing up as much as possible. Ooh, that was a big old bounce there. Shockingly, all we lost was this elevon. Okay, well, that was interesting. No doubt about it. All we lost was the elevon here. I will take it. This thing is so resilient, it can take a beating. An absolute beating. Let's recover this, and that's great. I'm very happy about that. Any landing you can walk away from, right? We'll take that. So in terms of our next mission, that's what we need to be looking at now. So that is, of course, our Columbus module is complete here. That's going to be the Dexter and the ELM. So the ELM is, of course, the Kerbal module. So that's going to be the Kerbal Gem PM, I think, is what we're looking at here. This is the Kerbal module, also known as the Gem. And this is what it links us from the ELM, Experiment Logistics module. But yeah, that's definitely saying the Japanese experiment module. So I think there's just a couple of different names for this particular thing. That's fine. And then the Dexter is going to be very interesting. I'm not entirely certain how we're going to go about building this monstrosity. That's going to be very interesting. No doubt about that. So here's Dexter on the end of the Canadarm. So it can get mounted to the Canadarm. And then it has just like all of these manipulation attachments, right? So this is a lot like a docking port here. Indeed. Yeah, I'm going to have to try to really spend some time parsing out what this thing actually does. Like how it functions. So this is the Dexter itself, right? Looks like we've got an arm out over here, and then we've got whatever this is. I'm not sure if that's holding on to like a bit of cargo. I suspect it is. Because if we look at this guy here, it doesn't have that same thing, right? So I suspect we've got two robotic arms on this, and then that can itself be attached to the Canadarm, which in this photograph is out over here. This is the Canadarm. So that's all well and good. For right now, we do need to get our payment, and so we will do that. Let's hop into here, grab not our database. Hang on. Let's hop in here, grab our payment. There we go. And let's hop into the VAB and see about what we can do with this. That's going to be very intriguing. I have a feeling this is going to be a pretty lengthy design process here. So if we look at the actual Kerbal module for now, this is the Japanese experimental module here. Now, the GEM RMS is a robotic arm. The ELMPS, the PM, the EF, the ICS, and the ELM-ES. These are all different components. So we can see here the GEM PM and the GEM RMS. These get brought up in the next flight. The exposed facility is in a different flight as well. So I think this is just sending up the ELM, which is not, I think, the ELM-ES or I think the ELM-PS. I think we're sending up the pressurized module of this. So ELM-PS. So this is the EF here. Okay. I don't see it. So we might have to send multiple parts here. So, the pressurized module is in the next flight. Okay. So this is in the next flight. The GEM RMS is going to be in that flight as well. So that flight is the pressurized module and the robotic arm. The exposed facility and the ICS should be in different flights here. So here's the exposed facility. And I don't know when the ICS gets lifted. Okay, we'll have to find that out. So the ICS is a very small component. I'm not too concerned about that. We can put that into basically anything. And then there's the ELM ES. That's the exposed section of the ELM. And I think this is what we're lifting right now. But where do we put it? So that would be as part of the RMS and exposed facility. This is going to get complicated, isn't it? This is going to get very, very complicated. So in its initial configuration, Kerbal consisted of 6 major elements: the PM, the EF, the ELM PS, the ELM ES, and the GEM RMS, as well as the ICS. Okay, so what we need to know here is, what did it look like when it was first attached? This is the largest single ISS module. Okay, that's good to know. These are all of the experiments here. So these are the parts. That's all well and good. We've pretty much figured out what all of the parts are. But the parts don't all get lifted at once. So the first 2 pieces of the module were launched on Space Shuttle missions STS-123 and STS-124. So that would be our STS modules that are lifted. Let's see, this is 123 and 124. So that is these 3 components. These are all parts of the Kerbal. So that's fine. The third and final components were launched on STS-127. So anything that we don't launch here gets launched on 127, which is the Kerbal exposed facility. Gotcha. So, by the end of this flight, it needs to look like this. If we were to do this in 3 flights, the awkward part here is that this section gets lifted first. So we'd have to figure out where we wanted to put that temporarily, right? That would be mission number 1 here. And this is a pretty basic component here. There's also the ICS here, but I think that the way I'm going to interpret this is that launching the ELM is specifically the exposed region of it. And then the next part would be the GEM pressurized module along with the robotic arm. So that would end up being this part and this robotic arm here, which is a fairly small robotic arm as far as robotic arms go. That's absolutely fine. And then the third component that we would end up launching would be this guy. And that is the exposed facility actually goes here. Right. So what are we calling the ELM? That's the question we need to figure out here. Terminology on this one is kind of complicated. So this is the pressurized section of the experiment logistics module. And then this is the exposed section. This is the exposed facility, the remote manipulator system, and the pressurized module. So that all makes perfect sense to me. What makes less sense is when we hop in here and this just says ELM. Maybe this is indicating that this should be the pressurized ELM. It's clearly not the pressurized module. I think it's pretty clearly not the exposed facility, and I would probably lift both of these in the same component. Well, actually, no, we shouldn't, should we? Because if we just do the ELM, then that would mean doing the pressurized and exposed sections simultaneously. Okay. Now, where do we put it? Where exactly do we put this on the ISS until the GEM pressurized module comes in? Because as we can see here, or actually it makes more sense to look at it here. The pressurized module is what actually ends up connecting to the ISS out over here. So this is the pressurized module. This is the ELM pressurized section. this is the ELM exposed section out here, and then this is the exposed facility. And then this is the robotic arm, if I'm understanding this correctly. I think I have my brain wrapped around how this works. The question is, where do we store these components? It would make a lot more sense to lift the pressurized module first. So lift this, then lift this, and then lift the Kerbal exposed facility, which is going to be after the S6 truss and solar arrays, which is fine. So that is kind of wild. I'm not going to lie. Why did they lift it in this order? So for the ELM here, launch sequence. Okay. It launched over 3 flights using the space shuttle. The shuttle had a large payload bay. Yes, obviously. The ELM arrived at the Kennedy Space Center, launched into orbit aboard Endeavour as part of STS-123. That makes sense. Then the pressurized module arrives on 30 May. It was stored until it was launched into orbit on 31 May as part of STS-124. On 3 June, the PM was attached to the Harmony module. At first, the ELMPS, the small cargo bay, was connected to a temporary location on Harmony, and later was moved to its final berthing location on the zenith of the main laboratory. Okay, that makes sense. So they attach the pressurized, or not the pressurized module, they attach the ELMPS to a temporary location on Harmony, and then move it after they attach the pressurized module. It makes no sense to launch it in this order, but okay, we can do this. That's kind of wild. I have no idea why the decision was made to launch them in this order, but okay. So we're going to grab the S3, S4 truss module. We'll do fine. And I want to hop in here. We're going to get rid of everything connected to here. We're going to manipulate this based off of our robotic arm. Now, I'm going to extend this out. There we go. And that'll allow us to work on this a little bit easier. So from here, we can drop our Advanced Grabbing Unit Junior. We're probably not going to need it, although we may want to store it in our cockpit just to be safe. We may actually want it. So I'm going to put one in the cockpit there. So from here, this is of course going to be the Dexter slash the, I'm going to just call it the, well, I'm going to call it the ELM. Okay. Dexter ELM. So that'll be fine. From here, we're going to need to design probably the Dexter and assign that here. And then we would have the Kerbal be here. I still haven't fully wrapped my head around what the Dexter is, though, to be honest. So I guess we could take a bit of a look at some research here. That would be reasonably fine. It was named to represent its dexterous nature. Indeed, I'm sure it was. So that is absolutely fine. It's now part of the mobile servicing system. It's a gigantic torso fitted with 2 arms. Okay, so that's fine. So basically, it's from, like, here out over here, right? This looks like a docking port to me. We can have a docking port on this side as well, and then just have the 2 arms here. Now, how many points of articulation are these arms? A lot of points of articulation is the answer. So can we get a good photograph showing the points of articulation here? Kind of. Yes, kind of. That is a lot of points of articulation. So one thing this doesn't really do is telescope, I think. I think it has a lot of hinges. I think it has a lot of rotation servos. And we can estimate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points of articulation approximately. Okay. So with that in mind, we can put in a docking port here. That'll end up being coupling. We're going to go with a docking port junior. And the docking port junior is going to go, if I can get this rotated correctly, there we go. It's going to go right here. And then we'll have a second one. And then we're going to need our torso here, right? That looks to me like it's, in terms of size, just like 1 to 2 modular girder segments. So we can do something along the lines of this, make them insulated, kind of like that. Maybe go for a 3rd modular girder segment. And then the attachment points are about 2/3 up. So they would go like here and here. Now, in terms of the actual articulation, we're going to need to use robotics here, and we're going to use a G00 hinge. I'm going to make both of these arms be the same. I don't know if they actually are, but I'm going to make both of them be the same. I also want to put a docking port on this side, and actually we should be building this here for the time being. Okay, so we'll put this docking port on. That's going to be this guy. Actually, we do need to remember to bring an extra Clampatron docking port, so I'll just toss that in there right now while I'm thinking about it. And then we will bring this in here. Okay, now we can think about rotation servos, right? So what is the smallest rotation servo that we have available? I think that's the F12? MO6? MO6. Okay, so that'll do for now. We can just have this be plain gray. And then we would have another hinge and rotation servo here. So this can now be rotated any direction, although I would prefer it if it was something like this. There we go. And then there's like a bunch of points of articulation here, right? But these are all very, very small. So it doesn't appear to have too much for telescoping capacity, I think. Let's see, I'm just looking up some additional details on these arms. 7 joints, okay. But it's fixed to dexter at one end. It's somewhat like a shortened Canadarm too, except that it has... Okay, so we would then have this be something kind of like this, you know? Like, I would like to have a little bit of spacers in some of these, I think, just based on the photograph. Because if we look at the photograph here, we can see there's definitely some spacing here and here. Right? So we could certainly do something like that. We would maybe even have a 1P2 hydraulic cylinder, but I think that's a little too big, to be honest. We would maybe just go with cubic octagonal struts. And then just fill these in. Oh, these can't actually be filled in? Okay. We'd just have to go with something like this. So like 4 cubic octagonal struts, they would end up going about here. Okay, so 1, 2, and then this guy needs to get rotated like that. So that's 4. And that should be 7 points of articulation. Then, I think that we need 1 more here, but in terms of articulation, I'm thinking about this. I think what we need to do is have one of these about every 2 points of articulation from here on. So this is 3 points of articulation. This is now 5 points of articulation. This is now 7 points of articulation. So it'll be something like this. Then at the end here, I'm just going to put on some grab arms. So that's going to end up being something kind of like this. It's a little on the big side, right? But something like that. Then in theory, this can fold up to be fairly tight by having this guy be here. And then this guy, oh, I don't want to actually rotate this. I want to grab our hinge, rotate it like that, and rotate it like that. Cool. This hinge, we would rotate like this, and then like this. And then this guy, we would rotate not like you. Hang on, not you. Back to 0. There we go. Grab the hinge, and would rotate it and just store this about like that. Then we would duplicate this, and that would end up going right there. Okay. And then we can just snap that into place. And this ends up being on the end of the Canadarm, at least more often than not. So that would be our Dexter analog. I don't know if it's not exactly perfect, but that would be our Dexter analog there. Now, it is time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. We're going to have to find some way to stow this thing. That's going to be exciting. I'm not sure exactly how we're going to do that yet. But we're going to need to also send up the... I forget the terminology already. The pressurized component of the non-pressurized module of the Kerbal. It's complicated. No doubt about that, but we will get that sent up in the next episode. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Shadow Wolf, Andy McGar, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, Soccerman12UK, Kentogan, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time. Very abrupt timing for the birds at the KSC to start. Okay, I like it.